In the summer of 1985, fear slowly began spreading across the quiet neighborhoods of Los Angeles. Families began locking their doors earlier than usual. Windows were checked again and again before bedtime. Parents slept lightly, waking up at the smallest sound in the night, because somewhere in the darkness, someone was watching. A man who would soon become known as the Night Stalker. His real name was Richard Ramirez, but before he became one of the most feared criminals in American history, he was just a troubled boy growing up in El Paso. Richard Ramirez was born in 1960 into a poor family. His childhood was filled with chaos and fear. His father had violent outbursts, and the household environment was unstable. As a young boy, Richard was often exposed to anger and violence inside his own home. However, one person had an even darker influence on him: his cousin Miguel. Miguel had returned from the brutal Vietnam War. He often told young Richard disturbing stories about the violence he had seen during the war. Sometimes he even showed him shocking photographs from the battlefield. Those images stayed in Richard's mind. Investigators later believed that these early experiences may have played a role in shaping the violent thoughts that developed later in his life. By the early 1980s, Ramirez moved to Los Angeles. Instead of starting a normal life, he wandered through the city, spending nights on the streets and committing small crimes like theft and burglary. At first, these crimes seemed minor, but slowly, something far more dangerous began to emerge. In 1984 and early 1985, a series of terrifying home invasions began appearing in police reports across California. The attacker would break into homes late at night while people were asleep. Sometimes he entered through unlocked doors. Other times he climbed through windows. The attacks were unpredictable. Some victims were elderly people living alone. Others were young couples sleeping peacefully in their homes. Sometimes the attacker stole money or valuables, but many times the attacks became violent and tragic. At first, police departments did not realize these crimes were connected. The attacks were happening in different cities and neighborhoods, but detectives eventually began noticing similarities in the way the crimes were carried out. As fear spread across the region, media outlets started reporting on the mysterious killer. Soon, journalists gave him a name that would become famous across the country: the Night Stalker. The name perfectly described the way the killer operated. He attacked at night, moving silently through neighborhoods while people slept. After each crime, he disappeared back into the darkness. Residents across California began living in fear. Gun stores reported a sudden increase in sales. Families installed stronger locks and security lights. Some people even slept with weapons beside their beds. But despite all the precautions, the attacks continued. The killer seemed impossible to catch. Police worked day and night trying to find him, but there were very few clues. Then investigators finally discovered something important. At one crime scene, Ramirez had left behind a clear shoe print. Detectives identified it as belonging to a rare type of sneaker called Avia. This small clue allowed police to connect multiple crime scenes together. Now they knew the truth. One man was responsible for all these attacks. The manhunt intensified. Police departments across California joined forces. News stations warned the public about the dangerous suspect. Witness descriptions were used to create a sketch of the killer's face. Soon, millions of people across the state were looking for the same man. Then one day, a newspaper published a photograph of the suspect. The entire city suddenly knew what the Night Stalker looked like. On August 31st, 1985, Ramirez unknowingly walked into a neighborhood where many residents had already seen his face in the news. Someone recognized him. A man shouted his name. Within seconds, people began chasing him through the streets. Ramirez tried to escape, running through the neighborhood in panic. But this time, he could not disappear into the night. Residents surrounded him and refused to let him escape. The crowd eventually captured him and held him until police arrived. For months, this man had terrorized entire cities, but in the end, it was ordinary citizens who helped stop him. The trial of Richard Ramirez began in 1988 and quickly became one of the most shocking criminal trials in American history. Inside the courtroom, Ramirez often behaved in strange and disturbing ways. Sometimes he smiled at the cameras. Other times he showed no emotion at all. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Witnesses testified about the attacks. Physical evidence linked him to multiple crime scenes. Eventually, the jury delivered its final verdict. Ramirez was found guilty of numerous murders and other serious crimes. He was sentenced to death. The Night Stalker case left a deep scar on the people of California. For many residents, the Summit of 1985 was a time they would never forget, a time when people were afraid to sleep in their own homes. This case also changed how police departments cooperate during serial crime investigations. It became an important lesson for law enforcement agencies across the country. Even today, the story of the Night Stalker continues to be studied by investigators and psychologists who want to understand how such criminals think and operate. Because sometimes the most frightening stories are not fictional horror tales. Sometimes they are real, and they remind us that danger can sometimes hide in the most ordinary places. If you found this story interesting and want to hear more true crime stories like this, don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel for more mysterious and real crime stories.